In this video we're going to be looking at Saladin and Richard I. Our learning intention is to explore their significance, with the success criteria being to identify key details about both Richard I and Saladin, to infer what Saladin was like as a leader, and to predict who a likely winner between the two in a battle would be. So, what I want you to do first, as a bit of a recap, is I want you to pause the video here. You've got three different columns in our table: religion, power, and then prestige and honour. What I want you to do is think back to what we were doing before half term, looking at why Europeans wanted to go on crusades. Think about knights, and think about nobles, think about peasants. And then I want you to put as many things you can think of which fit those three criteria as you can onto the table. So evidence to show why people went on the crusades. So pause the video here and complete that first. Once you have done that, press play and you can move the video on. So, some of the things you might have had are as follows. For religion, people wanted to free Jerusalem from Islamic rule. Some people wanted salvation and sins forgiven, so they were looking to get into heaven rather than hell. And there was a desire to protect Christians in the East, so particularly in the Byzantine Empire. Power-wise, the Pope wanted to make the church more powerful, as well as his own position. And then some knights, they want to actually control land in the Holy Land where they were crusading to. Finally, prestige and honour. Some people want to do great deeds like their ancestors. We talked about how Christians had been heroic in the past, and Pope Urban played on that. People thought it was honourable to defend other Christians, and some people were in it for the money, because, as we know, more money, the more power and more prestige you have. So those are some of the things you could have had in those boxes. So, this is where we left off last time, at the end of the First Crusade. There's a map of the Holy Land there, and you can see the large area that the Seljuk Empire controlled, and then over here at the bottom we've got the Kingdom of Jerusalem, controlled now by the Christians after the First Crusade. However, we're going to be skipping now to the Third Crusade, and we're going to be looking this week and next week at around the year 1190. So as you can see here, the Seljuk Empire is now gone, and Jerusalem is no longer under the rule of Christians. It all falls under the dominion of one of the people we're looking at today, and that's Saladin. So that is the area that we're looking at today, and the control within the Holy Land. So here's Saladin. He was a Muslim military and political leader who was a sultan, so that's a leader, who led Islamic forces during the Crusades, specifically the Third Crusade, which we're going to be looking at today and next week. He started out in Egypt leading forces, and then used that wealth that they had in the country in order to invade Syria. So he spread control very, very quickly and was very successful at winning battles and taking over more territory. In July of 1187, Saladin invaded the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and he absolutely annihilated the Crusader army at what was known as the Battle of Hattin. Saladin captured King Guy of Jerusalem, so the King of Jerusalem was captured in that battle. He then went on to capture the city of Jerusalem on October 2nd, after 88 years of Crusaders being in charge, a Christian rule. Soon after that, he had taken back all of the land the Crusaders had taken, except for the city of Tyre. So, task 1. What I want you to do, we've got two sources here about Saladin, and I would like you to use those sources to explain what they are telling us about what he was like as a leader. So source 1 says, Saladin allowed the people of Jerusalem who were held captive to buy their freedom. Men had to pay 10 dinars, women had to pay 5 dinars, and children had to pay 1 dinar to buy their freedom. So this is after Saladin's captured the city from the Christians. Source 2 says, when deep in battle against the Crusaders, a Christian woman was brought to him. Raiders had taken her 3-month-old child and sold it at a slave market. The woman was distraught. She was told that Saladin might help. She explained the situation, and Saladin ordered that the child be found. He refunded the buyer and gave the child back to its mother. They were then escorted safely back to the Crusader camp. So 2 sources there about what Saladin was like. I want you to use the sentences in the red box to help you guide your paragraph. So you're going to need to include some evidence from the sources and then explain. So you can use the structure in this red box and just add in the missing bits. If you get that done quickly, there's an extension to predict what you think the Christian response to the Battle of Hattin might be. So what are they going to do next? Pause the video here. Once you've completed that task, press play, and then you can move on. So, this brings us now to Richard I. Now, Richard was born on September 8th, 1157 in Oxford, England. His father was King Henry II of England, and his mother was Eleanor of Aquitaine, so she was very important in France. Henry II decided to distribute his kingdom among his 3 eldest surviving sons. So his 3 oldest sons he wanted to give different parts of his land to. In 1170, Richard's older brother, Henry the Young King, was crowned as the King of England. So he was sort of made king, but not really. It's a complicated situation. Henry II wanted to give England, Normandy and the area of Anjou to Henry. He wanted to give Aquitaine and Poitiers to Richard, and Brittany to his 3rd son, Geoffrey. So he was planning to split off all his land before he died. But in 1173, Henry the Young King was getting impatient to rule independently. So he wanted the whole thing to himself. He wanted to be king, not shared with his father. So what he did was he revolted, and he went to France to get assistance from King Louis VII in order to try and make himself full-on king. However, that was unsuccessful, and his father Henry II put the revolt down. 10 years later, Henry the Young King died, and that made Richard the eldest surviving son and the new heir to the throne. By this point, he didn't have a particularly good relationship with his dad, Henry II, because his father wanted him to give up his land in Aquitaine to his younger brother John. Now, people generally don't like giving up land, so Richard was not about to do that. Richard refused, and he joined with Philip II, who was the son of Louis VII, the King of France, and they planned another revolt against Henry II. This time, though, it was more successful, and Richard and Philip's army defeated Henry's forces, and Henry II had no choice but to make Richard the undisputed heir. Only 2 days later after that, in 1189, Henry II died of a bleeding ulcer, and Richard became King of England, now Richard I. After his coronation as king, Richard, having already taken the Crusaders' vow, set out to join the Third Crusade to free the Holy Land from Saladin. So next week we're going to look a bit more closely at what happened between Saladin and Richard I. Today was focusing on who these 2 individuals were. Your final task now is, based on this information on Richard that we've just gone through, I want you to complete some questions in full sentences. Now, last time there was a mixed response to completing questions in full sentences. Remember, when you are completing in a full sentence, you don't just write the answer, you link it into the question. So the first 2 I've started off the sentences for you to get an idea of how to start off your answers, but I do expect these to be completed fully, not just the answers written in. So your questions are: where was Richard born? Who were Richard's parents? Which region did Richard's father want him to inherit? In what year did Richard's elder brother die? Why did Richard revolt against his father? And then what did Richard do after his coronation? Finally, there's an extension challenge. Based on the information during this lesson, who do you think is more likely to win in a battle between Saladin and Richard I? So explain why you think that. So look back at the information I gave you about both of them. At this point, who do you think would potentially win between the 2 of them, without looking into it anymore yourself? So that's going to be your final task. Make sure to answer those questions in full sentences, please. Don't just write in the answer. They are fairly simple questions. It's just reading comprehension. You can go back and look at the text to find your answers, I want you to make sure you're practicing completing them fully. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to send in your work via Teams as usual.